The evening sky had turned a deep, hushed purple when a fragile-looking girl named Nitu hoisted her small milk can onto her shoulder and set out along the winding dirt path that led through her village. She was only 7 years old, yet her eyes already held an unmistakable spark of determination. Her father, Rampal, a diligent milk merchant, had sent her off to deliver the day's last batch of milk, instructing her to then hurry to school. What made Nitu's life so remarkable wasn't simply the fact that she balanced school and milk deliveries each morning. Rather, it was the zeal with which she approached both tasks, as though they were intertwined parts of one destiny. By day, she was a curious student, devouring her lessons with vigor. By early morning and late afternoon, she was a dutiful daughter, helping her father earn just enough to keep their household afloat. Their home was a modest hut made of flimsy wooden boards, perched precariously near a small river that wound around the edge of the village. The smell of fresh milk lingered in the air around their property, a comforting reminder of their trade, but also an ever-present symbol of their struggles. On this particular evening, Nitu's footsteps quickened. She had to drop off milk at Aunt Indu's house, who was known for her chatter and her generosity in tipping. Aunt Indu was waiting by her open doorway, arms folded across a bright purple sari, tapping her foot impatiently. The glow of a lantern revealed a warm smile as soon as she spotted Nitu scurrying up the pathway. "You're late today, child," Aunt Indu exclaimed, her voice brimming with mock sternness. "I've been dying for a cup of hot tea." Nitu shifted the can carefully, making sure not to spill a drop. "I'm sorry, Auntie," she said, pushing her hair from her face. "Father was busy measuring out the milk. We had some new customers, so it took a little longer." "New customers?" "Oh, speaking of new, there's a new teacher in town. He just arrived yesterday. I heard from the grocer that he might need fresh milk daily. You should visit him tomorrow and see if he's interested in buying." Nitu handed over the milk, nodded politely, and promised to do just that. Her father, Rampal, relied heavily on her keen sense of responsibility, trusting her to form new business relationships wherever possible. In a village that seldom changed, a new resident, particularly a teacher, was cause for excitement. Early the next morning, Nitu set out with her milk can, delivering to her regular customers, and then found her way to the small house on the outskirts of the village that Aunt Indu had mentioned. Standing at the threshold, she hesitated momentarily before tapping softly on the door. The face that greeted her was that of a slender man in his mid-30s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. This was Srinivas, the new schoolteacher. "Yes, may I help you?" he asked, noticing the small girl with a can of milk in one hand and a slightly oversized school bag slung across her shoulder. "Good morning, sir," she replied, offering a respectful nod. "I'm Nitu. Aunt Indu mentioned you might want fresh milk. Father sells milk, and I help him with deliveries before school. If you need half a liter or a liter each day, we can provide it." Srinivas looked at the determined glint in Nitu's eyes, clearly impressed that she handled milk deliveries and attended schools simultaneously. "That's very kind of you, Nitu. Yes, I'd love to have half a liter of milk each morning. Thank you for stopping by." Relieved to have found another customer for her father, Nitu handed over the milk, collected the payment, and tucked it safely into her pocket. She then hurried along the road to reach her classroom, where the same man she had just met would soon stand at the front, instructing students on the day's lessons. When Nitu arrived, breathless, she found him already introducing himself to the rest of the class. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "My name is Srinivas, and I'll be your new teacher. I've just moved here, and I'm looking forward to guiding you through your studies." Nitu slipped into her seat, trying not to disturb the class. She noticed the teacher's curious gaze land on her for a moment, then shift back to the rest of the students. The day proceeded in much the same way any normal school day would, but Nitu could feel a sense of anticipation in the air. Something about this teacher promised a new chapter in her life. As weeks went by, Srinivas became more and more impressed with Nitu's quick mind. He noticed that when he posed math questions or asked the class to memorize tables, she could respond instantly, without hesitation. One afternoon, he singled her out while she was dropping by his home to deliver milk. "Nitu," he said, "tell me, how much is 7 times 7? Without a second's pause, she replied, 49, sir. "And 3 times 9? 27, sir." He nodded, pleased. "You have an excellent memory. I also see that you're quite confident. I want you to keep developing that skill. Confidence will take you very far in life." His praise warmed Nitu's heart. She felt a surge of pride and hope, sensing for the first time that perhaps her knack for studies could lead her somewhere beyond her father's daily routine of measuring out milk. She had always enjoyed school, but hearing such words from a teacher validated her dreams in a way she had never before experienced. Life continued in its modest pattern: morning deliveries, classes throughout the day, afternoon deliveries, and endless chores at home. For a child, Nitu handled a workload that many adults would find daunting, yet she never complained. Whether it was exhaustion or a simple contentment with her place in the world, she carried on with a smile and determination. Yet destiny has a way of shaking up even the most steadfast routines. One monsoon season, the sky darkened ominously for days, each passing hour bringing heavier clouds. Weather reports filtered through the local radio, warning of a catastrophic storm brewing in the Bay of Bengal that could unleash torrential rains, high-speed winds, and raging floods. Most villagers took these warnings seriously and prepared as best they could, moving valuables to higher ground, gathering essential supplies, and readying themselves for the worst. Rampal looked anxiously at the thin wooden walls of their hut. He knew it wouldn't endure severe flooding. His cows, tethered behind the house, had only a makeshift shed for protection. Fear gnawed at him, but he tried to appear calm for Nitu's sake. "We must be cautious," he told his daughter. "The water might rise quickly. If it does, we'll have to take shelter at the school hall or some place on higher ground." Nitu recalled seeing the school teacher, Srinivas, urging villagers to heed the warning and find safer shelters. She wondered if he had a plan of his own for withstanding the storm. But all her thoughts soon drowned in the roar of the rain. It fell in sheets, each drop pounding against the roof with near-deafening intensity. Within hours, the river swelled, creeping ominously closer to their home. In the middle of the second night, fierce winds lashed through the village. The sound of branches snapping pierced the darkness, and the water kept rising relentlessly. The flimsy hut walls groaned under the force of the rain and wind. Alarmed, Rampal woke Nitu. "Get your belongings!" he shouted over the howling storm. "We can't stay here. The hut won't last." They stumbled outside, struggling to keep their balance in the knee-high water, all while battered by wind gusts. Rampal guided Nitu toward the higher ground near the schoolhouse. As they waded through the murky waters, Nitu cast desperate glances over her shoulder. "Father," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Our cows! They're still behind the house. We'll lose them." Rampal felt a sharp pang of guilt. The cows were their livelihood, but he couldn't manage to rescue them in these conditions. Yet Nitu insisted. She released her father's hand and dashed back, stumbling and slipping, but pushing forward to untie the animals. In those crucial moments, the shed collapsed with a loud crash. Terrified, the cows bolted and waded off into the darkness. Fearing for his daughter's life, Rampal rushed after her. By sheer fortune, Nitu had managed to avoid the shed's collapse. Together, father and daughter pressed on until they reached the school hall, which had been opened for emergency shelter. Nearly half the village huddled there, soaking wet, eyes filled with uncertainty. For the next 2 days, the storm raged mercilessly. The village roads turned into rivers of muddy, debris-laden water. Trees fell, blocking any path for rescue vehicles. People did what they could, comforting one another, sharing the little food they had. At last, on the 3rd day, the rain subsided, revealing a battered landscape. Many houses, including Rampal's, were completely destroyed. The once lush fields had turned into waterlogged wastelands, and among the losses were Rampal's 2 cows. Their meager livelihood had washed away in the flood. A sense of despair settled over Rampal's heart. With no home, no money, and no cows to sell milk, the future looked bleak. Nitu, too, felt the weight of uncertainty. How would they rebuild their lives? What about her education? It was around this time that Srinivas learned of their plight. Approaching Rampal, he said quietly, "I heard what happened to you and your family. I'm so sorry. Please don't give up on Nitu's future. She's exceptionally bright. If you keep her in school, I truly believe she'll achieve remarkable things. But I know you've lost everything, so if you need help." Without waiting for a response, Srinivas pressed a sum of money into Rampal's hand. Rampal gaped at the teacher, tears pooling in his eyes. It was enough to buy a couple of new cows to start their milk business again. For a man like Rampal, who prided himself on never begging or borrowing, it was a humbling moment. "Sir," he stammered, his voice choked with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you. You barely know us." Srinivas shook his head, patting Rampal on the shoulder. "I know enough. I know that your daughter is one of the brightest students I've ever taught, and I can't let her potential go to waste. When you're able to, pay me back. If you can't, just pay it forward by helping someone else in need one day." From that day onward, Rampal resolved that he would never let Nitu's education falter. Little by little, they rebuilt their lives. He purchased 2 cows, resumed delivering milk to existing customers, and slowly grew a modest business once again. Nitu, despite the emotional and financial strains her family faced, continued attending school with unwavering dedication, fueled by the faith her teacher had placed in her. Over the next few years, the village saw many changes. The old huts were replaced by sturdier structures. Some families moved away, others relocated within the area. Eventually, Srinivas himself received a job transfer, and he and his wife had to relocate to another region. Before leaving, he visited Rampal and Neetu one final time. "You have a bright future," he told Neetu, smiling fondly at the girl who no longer carried a milk can to class each morning but rather came well prepared with textbooks. "Study hard, and remember, true knowledge is the best tool you can ever have. Use it wisely." He turned to Rampal, adding, "She has the potential to go far, further than she herself realizes. Support her. Let your daughter spread her wings. That's the greatest gift a father can give." And with that, he was gone. The absence of this benevolent teacher left a void in the village, but his influence remained deeply rooted in Neetu's heart. She clung to his words, aspiring to do justice to the faith he had shown in her. As time passed, Neetu excelled in her studies, eventually securing a scholarship to a good boarding school in a neighboring town. Living away from her father was difficult at first. She missed the comforting routine of morning milk deliveries and the lively chatter of the villagers. But she remembered the vow she had made, to become someone her teacher and her father could be proud of. She studied diligently, mastering every subject she encountered. Though she was still the daughter of a humble milk seller, her perspective on life had broadened. She befriended students from different social backgrounds, participated in school clubs, and discovered her passion for science, particularly biology. Gradually, the dream to become a doctor took hold. She remembered the times she had seen people in her village suffering from minor ailments simply because they couldn't afford or access proper health care. She recalled how, during that brutal storm, many of her neighbors had lacked medical assistance. "If I become a doctor," she would say to herself, "I can save people from suffering. I can treat those who don't have money. I can bring hope where there is none." Her father, hearing her resolve, beamed with pride. Though he had no formal education himself, he understood the significance of having a daughter who could break free from the cycle of poverty, not just for their family, but for the entire community. True to her word, Neetu worked harder than ever. She burned the midnight oil, mastering every chapter of her science textbooks, absorbing all the knowledge her teachers imparted. She entered and won science fairs, and eventually earned a coveted place at a reputable medical college in the city. The day she received her acceptance letter, she clutched it tight to her chest and wept, overcome by gratitude to her father, to her teacher, and to the small acts of kindness that had helped her along the way. In medical school, Neetu's life took on a different rhythm. She left behind the dusty roads of her village for the sprawling campus, towering buildings, and advanced laboratories. Yet she never forgot the early mornings filled with the scent of fresh milk, nor the simple joy of seeing her father's wide grin when customers praised the quality of their milk. Most importantly, she never forgot her teacher's compassion. She studied with the same drive and ambition that had once propelled her through second-grade multiplication tables. After years of intense training, sleepless nights, and countless examinations, Neetu finally became Dr. Neetu. Once her residency was complete, she had the chance to join prestigious hospitals in big cities, where she could have earned a lucrative salary. But her heart yearned for something else. She couldn't bear the idea of turning her back on those who couldn't afford proper care. She remembered the crowd of people who'd huddled together in the school hall during the flood, the hunger in their eyes, the fear in their voices. She thought of her neighbors who had lost everything. She thought of her father's unwavering dedication in delivering milk day after day. She recalled the teacher who had offered them hope in the darkest moments. The memory of how a small act of kindness could transform lives propelled her to set up weekly medical camps in remote villages. Sure, she saw patients in a city clinic during weekdays to pay her bills, but every weekend she packed her stethoscope, bandages, and basic medication kits, driving long hours to reach the most underserved areas. People flocked to her camps, relieved that someone would examine them without demanding fees they couldn't pay. In these camps, she encountered various medical issues: children with fevers, elders with chronic aches, pregnant women requiring prenatal care, and accident victims whose wounds had gone untreated for days. She helped them all to the best of her ability, never once forgetting that she might have been in their place had fate not intervened. Through this practice, her reputation grew. Villagers revered her as their guardian angel who would arrive every Saturday to bring healing and hope. One day, as she was finishing a particularly long shift in her city clinic, her phone buzzed. The caller was Dr. Anil, a former mentor of hers. "Dr. Neetu," he said, his voice urgent. "I have a critical situation here in Hyderabad. A famous industrialist, Sanjay Malhotra, needs a complex surgery. I need you on my team as soon as possible." Neetu was taken aback. She knew Dr. Anil wouldn't have called if it wasn't urgent. "I'll try to leave right away," she replied. "Let me just pack a few essentials," he insisted. "Please do. The operation is scheduled tomorrow afternoon, but the patient's condition is deteriorating. We need your skill, especially if complications arise." An hour later, a car arrived at her doorstep, sent by Dr. Anil. She hopped in, carrying a medical bag loaded with additional supplies, intending to perform the surgery and return in time for her weekend medical camp. The driver took the highway, but ominous clouds overhead began to gather. With every passing mile, the skies darkened until, finally, torrential rain hammered down. The driver slowed to a crawl. Visibility was almost zero, and the roads were slick with water. They switched to an alternate route when a large tree toppled across their path, only to find more fallen trees blocking other roads. At one point, the car became stuck in the mud. With no other option, they were forced to abandon the main highway, eventually stumbling on an unpaved route. The rain continued to lash out. A fierce wind whipped around them, and the muddy road turned into a treacherous quagmire. Eventually, the car sputtered and got lodged in deep sludge, leaving them stranded. They sat there, trying to decide if they should walk forward or stay put. Suddenly, the flicker of a lantern appeared through the sheets of rain. A village man, carrying a lamp, approached the car. "You folks seem to be in trouble," he called out. "This road is impassable now. My master asked me to check on you. He said you're welcome to take shelter in our house until the weather clears." Neetu, knowing she had to reach Hyderabad as soon as possible, sighed with frustration, but she also understood that, in these conditions, traveling onward was impossible. She and the driver collected what they could from the car and followed the lantern's warm glow toward a small, sturdy-looking house made of bricks. Inside, the man introduced himself as Raman. "Please sit here and dry off," Brahman offered. "I'll bring you something to eat. My master is inside, but he's ill. We've had doctors see him, but everyone says his treatment will cost a lot of money." Neetu could hear a raspy cough emanating from one of the back rooms. Concern flashed across her face. "If you don't mind, I can take a look at your master. I'm a doctor. Raman nodded, relieved. That would be wonderful. Let me fetch some hot water. Nitu followed him into a dimly lit bedroom where an older man lay on a cot, his face contorted in pain. She examined him carefully, discovering that he needed immediate intervention. Rolling up her sleeves, she asked Raman and her driver to help. They retrieved her medical bag, which, thankfully, contained enough supplies to manage small procedures. For the next hour, Nitu worked tirelessly, focusing on stabilizing the patient. When she finally emerged, she wiped the sweat from her forehead and addressed the worried Raman. He'll be all right for now, but he needs proper follow-up care. I have to leave soon for Hyderabad. There's a critical surgery I must assist with. But I promise, on my way back I'll stop by. Keep him on these medications 3 times a day. Make sure he gets plenty of rest and fluids. Raman bowed repeatedly in gratitude. Thank you, doctor. My master is a kind man who lost his wife years ago. He's been lonely and ill since. Your arrival must be fate. The rains lessened at dawn, and Nitu and her driver managed to free the car from the mud with the help of some local villagers. They hurried on to Hyderabad, making it just in time for the surgery. Despite being exhausted, Nitu summoned all her skill and concentration. The operation was a success, allowing her to breathe a sigh of relief. After a short rest, she made good on her promise. She returned to Raman's village to check on the older man. To her amazement, when she walked into his room, she immediately recognized the face of the patient. It was her old teacher, Srinivas, the same man who had once held out a hand of kindness to her father, the same man who had praised her intellect and offered her encouragement when she was just a little girl delivering milk. The years had weighed on him, and illness had ravaged him, but his eyes still shone with warmth. She knelt at his bedside, fighting back tears. Teacher, she whispered, her voice quivering. It's me, Nitu, Rampal's daughter. You used to buy milk from me. You helped us when our house was destroyed by a flood. You gave my father money to restart our business. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. At first, Srinivas's tired eyes remained blank, struggling to focus. Then, recognition slowly dawned, bringing a soft smile to his face. In a voice weakened by illness, he murmured, Nitu, my bright little star. So it's you. She gently squeezed his hand, explaining how his generosity had enabled her to continue her education, which eventually led to her becoming a doctor. Srinivas seemed overwhelmed. I'm so proud of you, he managed, tears spilling down his cheeks. I can't believe the milk seller's daughter has come back as a doctor, saving my life. In that moment, the roles were reversed. The benefactor had become the beneficiary, and the child who'd been helped was now the savior. Nitu arranged for proper treatment, using her contacts to ensure Srinivas received all the medical attention he needed. She brought him into her own home, setting up a comfortable room where he could recover fully. Each day, she'd spend time with him, chatting about the old days, how the village had changed, and how her father, Rampal, was faring. She recounted all the patients she had treated, the joys and challenges of medical life, and the memories of trudging through muddy lanes with her milk can. Srinivas listened in wonder, frequently shaking his head with disbelief. I never imagined, he would say, that my small help would one day return to me in such a miraculous way. Nita told him. Teacher, your kindness wasn't small. You preserved my future at a time when life seemed hopeless. If you hadn't stepped forward, I might never have become who I am today. Over the next few weeks, as his health stabilized, Srinivas found a new zest for life. He delighted in meeting Nita's patients, sometimes sitting in a corner of her free medical camp, watching her do the work she loved. Once in a while, he'd softly interject with words of praise or suggestions. He witnessed how villagers, who could barely afford a single checkup, now received top-notch medical care for free. He saw how children's faces lit up when Nita reassured them about their aches and pains. In those moments, the old teacher recognized the power of nurturing talent and compassion. A single flicker of kindness could ignite a blaze of positive change. When Srinivas was well enough to speak at length, he and Nita spent hours reminiscing. She told him about the trials she'd faced in medical school, the times she felt overwhelmed, the solace she found in remembering how he had once believed in her ability. Your confidence in me, she admitted, was like a lamp in a dark tunnel. And as she spoke, she also revealed her deeper motivation. Teacher, I saw too many people in our village suffer, especially during the great storm. No one was there to treat them. That memory haunted me, but it also shaped my goal. I wanted to be a beacon of hope. You gave me that spark when I was just a little girl. In return, Srinivas shared his own journey, how he had grown up in a faraway town, how he'd been saved by a mentor in his youth, much like Nita was saved by him. We stand on the shoulders of those who help us, he reflected. And when it's our turn, we extend a hand to the next generation. That's how the world becomes a kinder place. One evening, sitting by the window overlooking the courtyard where Nitu's father, Rampal, now older but still hardy, was chatting with patients, the two of them realized the depth of life's mysterious cycle. Teacher and student, father and daughter, benefactor and beneficiary, the lines had blurred, weaving a tapestry of shared compassion and gratitude. Eventually, when Srinivas was fully recovered, Nita refused to let him leave. Stay with us, teacher, she insisted. You have no family left, and I can't bear the thought of you being alone again. Overwhelmed by her devotion, he relented. He took on a small role in the household, teaching some of the local children who came to see Nitu's clinic. He also continued to encourage Nitu's philanthropic endeavors. Whenever he saw her falter or become exhausted, he would remind her, "Think of the storm. Think of how you overcame it. You can overcome anything now." Nitu's story soon spread far beyond her village. Journalists came to interview the doctor who never turned anyone away, only to discover that her remarkable work had been inspired by an equally remarkable teacher. They were moved by a saga that exemplified the truth that kindness begets kindness, creating an unbreakable chain of compassion. In the end, what started as a small act of charity, a teacher giving money to a desperate father to buy a pair of cows, led to a revolution in community health care, a revival of hope for countless villagers, and a touching reunion that spanned decades. Nita had saved her teacher's life, but she always insisted that he had saved hers first. "Without you," she would say, "my father and I would have drowned in the aftermath of that flood, perhaps not physically, but mentally and emotionally. You showed us there was still a chance to rebuild and thrive." And so, the final lesson from this extraordinary chapter was that we are all capable of sowing seeds of light in someone else's life. The harvest of that kindness might not be immediate. It might even take decades to bloom. But when it does, it can be a powerful force, capable of saving lives and illuminating souls. Need to learn that destiny is shaped by the choices we make to support one another, and Srinivas witnessed his faith in a small girl come full circle as she stood before him, a healer, a beacon of empathy, and a testament to how one simple act can change the world. If you find yourself ever wondering whether small gestures matter, remember the journey of Neetu and her teacher. How a coin in a struggling hand became the lever that lifted an entire community. How a glimmer of promise in a child's eyes blossomed into a wave of compassion touching countless lives. And how the storms that threatened to wash us away can also lead us to new shores of hope. This story reminds us that a little kindness can have unimaginable echoes. Like rainwater that trickles from the roof into a narrow stream, eventually joining the mighty river, our benevolence can merge into a vast current of goodwill that spans nations and generations. And that current can sweep us toward a future where, just maybe, no gift of love or empathy ever goes to waste. In the months following Srinivas's recovery, Neetu found herself balancing more responsibilities than ever before. Not only was she overseeing her growing network of free medical camps, but she also took on the role of training a handful of younger volunteers, aspiring nurses and medical assistants eager to lend a hand. She organized workshops in the village school auditorium, inviting anyone curious about basic first aid, nutrition, and hygiene. Children and adults alike attended these sessions, marveling at how far their once unassuming neighbor had come. During one such workshop, a timid young girl named Rima approached Neetu, eyes sparkling with admiration. "Doctor," she whispered, "I want to be just like you someday. My father sells vegetables in the local market, and we don't have much, but I love learning how to help people." Neetu smiled, seeing a reflection of her younger self in Rima's hopeful face. "If you study hard and never let go of your dreams, you can do anything," she encouraged. "Ask questions, read whatever books you can find, and don't ever think you're too small to make a difference." When Rima's father heard about her daughter's newfound ambition, he visited Neetu's clinic. With a humble bow, he said, "My daughter has been talking about medicine since attending your workshop. I don't have much money to support her further education. Do you think there's any chance she could get a scholarship?" A wave of emotion washed over Neetu as she recalled her own struggles. How she had once feared that her academic aspirations would remain a distant dream. She promised Rima's father she would help guide the girl towards scholarship opportunities, connecting her with programs run by charitable organizations and encouraging her to apply to specialized science camps. "We can find a way," she assured him. "There's always a path for a hard-working student." Meanwhile, Neetu's personal life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. She received invitations to speak at conferences on rural healthcare, sometimes traveling to major cities to discuss her work. At one such conference, a panel of esteemed doctors listened intently to her stories, how her teacher's small act of kindness had shaped her destiny, how her father's tireless devotion had kept her on track, and how she believed in paying it all forward. After her speech, a senior physician approached her with an offer. "Dr. Neetu, your passion is inspiring. Our foundation would like to fund an expanded program of weekly medical camps across several districts. We'll provide equipment, personnel, and a modest stipend for volunteers." All we need is your commitment to oversee it. The offer took her breath away. She knew it would be a colossal undertaking, more villages, more travel, and more hours away from home. But the potential good it could bring was staggering. She thought of all the children like Rima, all the elders suffering from neglect, and all the pregnant mothers with no access to proper prenatal care. I accept, she said finally, tears welling in her eyes. I'll do whatever it takes to expand our reach. That night she returned home late and found Srinivas dozing under a reading lamp, a half-finished book in his hands. She gently tapped him on the shoulder to wake him. Teacher, she said softly, I've been offered a chance to grow our work even further. It might mean more time on the road, but we'll be able to serve so many more communities. Srinivas's face lit up. It sounds like a dream come true. But don't forget to look after yourself in the process, Neetu. The village needs you healthy and strong. Neetu nodded, remembering how her teacher had always balanced concern for her well-being with pride in her accomplishments. She promised she would stay mindful of her own health and rest whenever she could. In her heart, she knew this was another step in the journey she had embarked on so many years ago, a journey that had begun with a simple act of generosity. Within a few weeks, caravans of volunteers and equipment began arriving in her village. The new program, dubbed Ray of Hope, launched with much fanfare. Red and white banners fluttered in the wind, and local children cheered as they watched doctors, nurses, and drivers load up vans destined for remote settlements. Many recognized Neetu, greeting her with joy and gratitude. Some had once been her classmates, marveling at how this humble girl they grew up with was now coordinating a sprawling healthcare project. Through the Ray of Hope initiative, Neetu not only offered medical services but also implemented community-building projects. She worked with local teachers, including Srinivas, who gave lectures whenever his health permitted, to promote literacy. She partnered with environmental specialists to teach villagers about sustainable farming and water management. The aim was holistic, to prevent the kind of devastation that had once befallen her own village during the floods. Amid all these developments, Neetu took a moment to revisit the place where her life had nearly been upended, the old site of her father's hut, now just a patch of grass beside the river. Standing on that patch one drizzly afternoon, she replayed memories in her mind, the nights filled with roaring winds, the frantic dash through floodwaters, and the anguish of losing their cows. Yet what rose above the sorrow was the memory of hope, her teacher's unwavering faith, her father's determination, and her own decision not to give up. Quietly, she whispered a prayer of thanks, acknowledging how all these experiences had shaped her into the person she had become. She thought of the countless lives touched by her medical camps, the volunteers who looked up to her, and the new generation of children who might never have to endure the helplessness she once felt. In the distance, she could see a group of young villagers working together to reinforce a levee along the river, a preventative measure to curb potential flooding. Their unified efforts reminded her that true progress comes from collaboration, communities supporting themselves and each other. This, she realized, was the essence of what her teacher had taught her. We lift ourselves by lifting one another. Srinivas lived on in her home for many years, watching Neetu's influence expand across districts. Even as age slowed him down, he found solace in seeing how far-reaching a single act of kindness could become. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he and Rampal would sit together, sipping tea and recalling how their lives had converged because of one crucial decision to help a little girl in need. As the Ray of Hope program flourished, it caught the attention of national and even international organizations. Doctors from other countries began visiting to study Neeta's methods, taking inspiration for their own rural outreach projects. Journalists documented her story, capturing heartfelt scenes of children receiving care and elderly patients blessing her with trembling hands. Through it all, Neeta never lost sight of her origins. She continued to visit her old school building, sometimes giving guest lectures on health and motivation. During each visit, she'd recall the fateful day she first met Srinivas, the man who saw potential in a small girl carrying a milk can. Her voice would tremble with emotion when she told the children, "Opportunity is like a seed. It only flourishes if someone takes the time to water it with kindness, patience, and belief." On her desk at home, she kept a small brass cow figurine, a gift from her father, symbolizing the cows they had lost in the flood. Next to it was a framed photograph of her and Srinivas, taken on the day he officially moved in to live with them. Whenever she felt overwhelmed by responsibilities, a quick glance at these items would remind her of the core values that had driven her since childhood: gratitude, perseverance, and empathy. Years passed, and Neeta became a central figure in rural healthcare advocacy. Governments invited her to consult on policy improvements for underserved communities. She worked with architects to design flood-resistant homes, ensuring that families would never endure the same terror she once had. She lobbied for better road infrastructure so that no medical team would be stranded like she was on that stormy night. And still, the heart of her mission remained unchanged: to offer healing where it was needed most, free from barriers of wealth or distance. The cycle of generosity that Srinivas ignited continued to spin, touching more people than either of them had ever imagined. Some of Neeta's former patients became her most loyal volunteers, citing their experiences of receiving life-saving treatments at her camps as the reason they dedicated themselves to service. In the twilight of his life, Srinivas would often rest in the garden, listening to the breeze rustle through the trees. He'd smile softly, thinking of how he once parted with a modest sum to buy cows for a struggling milk seller. At the time, it had felt like a small, almost inconsequential gesture, but the seeds it planted had blossomed into a grand, far-reaching legacy. And whenever Neeta passed by, a stethoscope draped around her neck, hurrying to her next mission, she'd pause, catch his gaze, and they'd share a silent understanding. The greatest reward for kindness is witnessing its ripple effect through generations. In this ever-expanding tale of compassion, dreams realized, and lives transformed, every character played a part. Rampal's unwavering love, Srinivas's timely help, Neeta's tireless resolve, Reema's blossoming ambition, all were threads woven together into a testament to what humanity can achieve when guided by empathy. Ultimately, the story of Dr. Neeta stands as a profound reminder that even when we feel small and powerless, we possess the capacity to uplift one another in ways that can resonate far into the future. Like two hands clasped in friendship, every act of benevolence can be the beginning of an extraordinary chain reaction, one that might span decades, bridge communities, and forever alter countless lives for the better. If you enjoyed this inspiring story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. By engaging with our content, you not only enrich your vocabulary but also improve your English in a meaningful and engaging way. Join our community, And let's continue learning together through powerful stories that leave a lasting impact.